That's it, right.
And we'll start with approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. We have a motion by Supervisor Frazier, seconded by Supervisor Brock. Any discussion or amendments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And all right, we'll turn it over to Brian this morning. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Supervisor Wood. Item number 1 is a request for a resolution to approve our revised hazardous materials response plan. This is updated annually, and it's that time. It's gone through our LEPC, and we would like the committee and ultimately to the board's approval for that plan.
Motion by Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Sieber. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Number 2 is a resolution request to transfer funds in the amount of $3,000 into our civil defense line. As you recall, at our last committee meeting, we brought to you a scenario where the Adirondack Gateway Council was giving us $10,000 to do a study of cellular and broadband scenario so that we could assist them in applying for the large state broadband grant that they're trying to do. At that time, I told you that the Washington County cost for that was $13,000. We had gotten 10 from them towards that, and our quote also came in at $13,000. So if we want to accomplish that task and do that study, I will need an additional $13,000 or $3,000 rather.
And as in the resolution, I believe Brian wants to take that from contingency, correct?
That is correct. I do not have that in my budget.
All right. We have a motion by Supervisor Gerard, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Very good, thank you. Number 3 is a travel request from myself. The statewide interoperability consortium is going to hold a symposium out in Oriskany where we're actually going to have the leadership of all the consortiums together in one place. So that would be for my travel to go there. That'll come out of our existing travel budget.
We have a motion by Supervisor Frazier, seconded by Supervisor Gerard. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
The next item would be for myself to attend the Lindstar Users Conference. This is the new software and asset tracking system that we got for the HAZMAT Consortium, and the funds for that are paid for by Lindstar and out of our HAZMAT Consortium grant.
Okay. We have a motion. Supervisor Frazier. We have a second. Supervisor Brock.
I just have a quick question, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Brian, are the numbers for the cost not reflected on these sheets because they're funded out of grant money? Or am I just missing?
Which numbers are you asking me
like
about?
Like for the 2 trainings, usually if there's a room rate or the GSA rate or the cost of the training.
Anything that we do is on the GSA rate. You need the exact dollar amounts?
I don't need it, just usually it's on here so we know how much we're approving, or if there's a fee for the conference, or if there's, just costs associated with it. The only reason I'm asking is I'm wondering if it's because it's covered by a grant that we just don't see it on here.
The one for Lindstar is covered by a grant, and that, the conference itself is included. The only cost there would be for one night stay, which is $99. The one for the conference in Oriskany, that's a one night stay, and that, I believe it's one night. Yes, that's a one night stay, and that's $83, which is the GSA rate.
Okay, great. And there's no conference fee associated with that one?
There is not.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it carries.
The next item is a referral that we talked about at our last meeting, was to refer the possibility of building a storage building for my equipment to be forwarded on to the Facilities Committee. That was done so, as far as I know. I'm sorry, did I skip one?
I think the second travel.
Oh, I don't have the newest version, obviously. This is a travel request for Amy to attend the tabletop exercise, which we are participating in. It's going to be in Lake Placid. It's for the entire consortium, and the expenses for this will not be paid out of our dollars. Will come out of consortium funds or grant funds that are used for that. This is actually a 2-day conference / tabletop, which is being done. We went out and Amy got a grant to do this. It's being handled by Tetra Tech, which is our vendor, And this is an HCEP compliant, which means it meets all the federal and state guidelines. There's all kinds of evaluators and things that have to happen, so it's gonna be quite an event. There's one daytime on a Friday, which is for those that can do it and do it on their own, on their work time, and then there's one on Saturday for all the volunteers.
Okay. Motion by Supervisor Frazier, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any discussion on this one? Supervisor Brock?
It says crude oil tabletop, what does that mean, crude oil tabletop?
That means that we are doing a tabletop exercise or a drill, pre-plan, whatever you wanna call it, for the purpose of looking at a rail car incident in the consortium, and the rail cars would be carrying crude oil.
Do you know how much crude oil goes through the county or through the area? Or
I do. It's about, well, there's 100 cars, 6 times a day, and each one holds 30,000 gallons.
Wow.
So you got about 1 million gallons per trip. 6 million gallons.
Is that through Warren County, or is it?
No, but it goes through, about 10 miles from here in Washington County, and right along Lake Champlain, and that whole corridor comes across the top of Canada through St. Lawrence, touches Franklin, Clinton, Essex, Washington, all the way to Albany. So that's a good portion of our consortium, and it's something we're very concerned about.
Right.
And, so to have this drill is very important.
Well, I'm not questioning your need to go, I'm just wondering what the hazard is and, what are our chances of something like that actually happening?
Not happening in Warren County, but happening in the consortium.
No, I mean regionally, you know.
Oh,
Warren.
unfortunately, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Really?
If you look at the, railroad lines and all the stuff that travels along Lake Champlain, and many areas right on the edge of the lake, the environmental and the hazardous materials, problems or, things we could deal with that are incredible.
Along Lake Champlain, but not, there's nothing in near Lake.
Hudson,
Huh?
the Hudson south of us,
Okay.
yep.
And the connection is that our people will be called to these.
Yeah, this is not our
Right.
project, other than we have the grant. We applied for the grant on behalf of the consortium. Amy's done a lot of work on that to put this together, and, I think it's an excellent opportunity for us, and like I say, we're not putting up any of the money.
Right.
We're just a fiduciary for it. But we are obviously participating. Amy is facilitating it, has done a lot of work on this to make this happen. So, fortunately, where we're having it in Lake Placid is not one of the buildings that burned over the weekend. So, we're good.
Well,
Any other-
well, like I said, I'm not questioning your need, I just
No,
wondered what
understood.
it was.
All right, anything else? Hearing nothing, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Brian, we can go back down to referral now.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I printed mine too early. The scenario to bring this to the Facilities Committee, I did talk to Jeff Tennyson and several others, and, this group has already given me approval to bring it to there. I just wanted to let you know that the Facilities Committee is after this meeting, so, I will be bringing it up there. If anyone has any questions, I did, print out what it is we're actually talking about, so that each member of this committee can have it, and I have enough here for the Facilities Committee as well, so if you would pass those out. Any questions on that? Okay. An update on the training center. It's been a while since I've given you an update. An interesting scenario, we were asked a question to produce a number as to how many students have utilized that training center in the last 2 years. And we ran the numbers off our sign-up sheets and our scheduling calendar, and to date, we've run over 1,900 students through that facility. So we're very pleased with the way that goes. Now, when I say students, if a person is there for a five-day class, that's listed as 5. So that would be each trip that they make to the facility. But the combination of the state instructors that Washington and Warren have, plus the individual fire companies that come and use it, National Grid used the site for several days. Law enforcement has put in quite a bit of time there, both the DOCS crew, the Department of Corrections, and the ERT, the CERT teams. So we're very happy the way that's going. That being said, we want to move ahead with several of the items that we have going on there. Number one, you recall recently that was donated to us was several container buildings that were given to us. They basically make up what looks like 2 houses. We're in the process of working on where we're going to site those. Working with Ross Dewberry and Jeff Tennyson, we are applying for some, for the approval from the FAA to use a small portion of the Powers property, which is right next to our road, so that we can use a small piece of that. So that's something that will come back to this group at some point, but we're working on that right now. We're also accumulating the cost that's going to be necessary to bring our utilities in. We need water, we need a hydrant there, and we also need gas and electric. So we're working with the Queensbury Water Department, and Supervisor Strau is assisting us there, and with the National Grid to bring in the other utilities that we need. So we have a project that DPW is aware of. They have the permit from the Army Corps of Engineers to put the new culvert in that's required. That was part of the original construction, but we want to get the other site work done, the excavation for this utility trench, before we put the culvert in. So that's just an update on where we are with the training center. We hopefully the more we do there, the more people will use it. The more the people use it, the more we'll be able to expand it. So right now we're very happy with the way it's operating, and we're going from there. Any questions on the training center?
Okay, anything else for Brian this morning? All right, well, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the sheriff's.
Morning.
Morning. Whenever you're ready, we're...
Supervisor, Sheriff York couldn't be here this morning. He has to attend a funeral. Our agenda is very short and sweet. The first action that we're requesting is to request a resolution for a new contract with Grayscape Six Flags for police services. Grayscape will pay the sheriff's office to render police services on their property. We will be invoicing the Grayscape on a monthly basis. They came to us within the last several weeks relative to some incidents they've had there recently, and initially they've asked for us to have a patrol on premise Sunday afternoons from about 3 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Those hours and days are probably going to change as we move through the fall, as they have the Fright Fest, because they've already indicated they want to have a police presence there as well.
All right. Do we have a motion? Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Sieber. Any questions or discussion? Supervisor Brock?
Usually, when you have police service or sheriff's service, we don't charge people for it. What's the reason for this? Is it different, or?
This is over and above our minimum staffing, so they're making a request to have an officer assigned specifically to their property, to the park. This is something that we did many years ago, where we had officers assigned there. And although we did not do it this summer, we do bill for police services in the village of Lake George. We have for the last several summers, where we have people just assigned to the village on a foot patrol, if you will.
Now, do we do that as, do we have to hire someone extra, or how do we handle the?
We cover it on overtime, and those costs are directly passed on to the Great Escape.
Supervisor Seaver?
Isn't it true though, at times, like for different events, Americade, I was thinking about the car show, I mean, there's many times that we're billing out to agencies for extra police coverage because of those events, correct?
We do for different events, for some of the triathlons and some of the other marathons that come through, we bill for those as well. This is just a little bit different because now we're going on to, the Great Escape property versus walking the public streets up in Lake George.
Any other questions? Supervisor Thomas?
All overtime, and, do you expect the hours to increase or stay the same, or?
Right now, they've asked for us to do Sunday afternoons. We expect that's gonna change as we move into the fall. They haven't specified what they want in the fall, but whatever we supply, we'll be billing them for that.
Seems like to me, as long as it's overtime, because otherwise, you have to do that.
No, it's all done on overtime.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Down to topics for discussion?
Topics for discussion, item A, we filled one position in corrections due to one resignation. The impact of the budget was an increase of approximately $2,424. The person filling the position was a rehire who was at a third-year rate of pay, which was a slightly higher rate of pay than the person who left us.
Okay.
Item B, the radio system project update. The equipment for the Luzerne site has been ordered. We're on target with the fiber company to have fiber run to the sites that we've asked for. We have a pre-application meeting scheduled with the Adirondack Park Agency on August 4th to review the permit process for Warrensburg and the Stony Creek radio tower sites. We've had some brief conversations with the APA thus far. Attorney Offerdew has been involved. He'll be going up to that meeting, and we're optimistic that we'll be able to make some headway as far as the permit goes.
Excellent.
One of the items that was brought up, I believe it was by Supervisor Sieber, was to look into providing email services for inmates. We've conducted research into establishing an email service for the inmates housed at the Warren County Correctional Facility. Sheriff York is not in favor of establishing an email for inmates at this time. At this point, I'd ask Captain Gates to come up to the podium. I've provided you a copy of the research that he's done, so you can look at that and have that as well. Mike?
Morning. I was tasked by Sheriff York to investigate the revenue potential and downside to providing email services for inmates. Each of you have a handout there. If you'd like to take a second, just peruse that. I'll answer any questions. The only county jail that's doing it locally is Washington County. I spoke to their lieutenant over there. He briefed us that the service costs about $2 a month per inmate. They're charging $5, and the average is they can send and receive up to 200 inmate emails per week for that service. The system can be adapted right into our current commissary funds, or excuse me, commissary system, where they would send them right from a kiosk. And it would operate across our current network. Their facility does not review any incoming or outgoing emails prior to them being sent or received. That poses a major security risk in my mind. They had one instance where order of protection was violated. An inmate reached out to a protected party, and he also afforded that the email services cut down on the number of phone calls and the reduced time for visitation. The second step in that was I reached out to our current vendor to receive more information in regards to the system. He confirmed that on average it's $2 per inmate per week, and most individuals are charging $5 for a $200 limit, a 200 email limit. The system is capable of setting up a keyword search, such as the word kill. If the word kill showed up in the email, that email wouldn't automatically get blocked. The system would prohibit attachments, and the actual email goes to an off-site server location, and a link is sent to the receiving party, who actually has to read that email from the server. So it's not in a direct possession of a personal computer. And they can respond to it very similar to like a text message. Potential revenue, I figured realistically, if 40% of our inmate population, maximum inmate population, took advantage of it, it would be about 75 inmates. Based on a $3 profit per week, that has a revenue potential of about $11,000, $11,700 per year. The staffing implications, taking that same 75 inmates at 200 inmates per week, that's 15,000 emails per week. To do it correctly, they would have to be reviewed prior to being sent or received to the facility. That would equate to about 2,143 per day, or 714 per shift. Now this is the maximum side of things, worst case scenario. So for an officer to review them, one officer would have to read 2 emails a minute, 24/7, to accomplish that task. Potential problems, an email address is anonymous. It's not hooked to anybody. A person can have multiple email addresses. So they're not listed on an order of protection. So we're not going to have that to be able to block that email address. And this can happen both ways. A order of protection in place on an inmate who is in my custody, a person could violate it from the outside because that is anonymous. The system would be increased across our current network. They said if we reviewed these, speaking to our IT people, if we reviewed these and sent them in large batches, it could affect our bandwidth within our facility itself. And then again, in addition, inmates talk in code. On the last page there, you'll notice that you make the statement. I'm sitting here eating a Slim Jim. I would pay $100 for a ham and cheese submarine right now. Sounds innocent to read, but now if that email was being sent to a staff member or contracted service potential, is he just ordering his lunch for $100 inside the facility? So there is that potential. Unlike our current phone system is provided by GTL. That is assigned, is linked to an actual individual. That individual has to register with GTL. When a phone call comes in, they have the option of not accepting the call or blocking that individual from coming. So the potential of violating that order of protection is greatly reduced.
Supervisor Seaver?
First, let me just say, this is great. You know, I appreciate the research and listing out both the pros and the cons. The reason I brought it up at the last meeting was that I had read in the Post-Star an article that Washington County was doing it. So by no means was I saying this was great or horrible. I just didn't know if we did it or not. So it's very interesting to see the counties around us, who's doing it and who isn't. But, you know, we always talk about increasing revenues, and I think it's important to remember that some revenues aren't worth increasing when we increase security risks and safety and staffing issues. So, you know, when you highlight the fact that an order of protection could so easily be violated, or the staffing responsibilities that are going to come with something like that, I think it's important to see the all-inclusive picture, and I appreciate the work that you put into it
To do it
to let us
correctly,
know.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The email itself is not a threat to the facility. It's the content
Sure.
which is contained in that email. And if that's not reviewed prior, I will be standing here in front of you answering the question why an order of protection
Yeah.
was violated on a piece of equipment that the Sheriff's Department has a contract for.
Well, and it's another step that we have an obligation to take to protect those victims, and I think that that's a clear safety issue with those emails. So I appreciate the information. Does the Sheriff's Association take a stance on this particular, do they have a position, or?
I'm not aware of any.
Supervisor Kenny, did you have a question?
Yeah, this is Warren County Correctional Facility, not Warren County Country Club.
Right.
And I don't think we should be providing optional services for inmates. This is one area they forfeit, when they come to jail.
Anything else for Lieutenant Gates? No?
Thank you.
Yep.
And then just before we, go today, I have one thing that the sheriff did give me just before. He had a brief announcement here, he asked me to read it. It says, the Warren County Sheriff's Office is proud to announce a new partnership with Double H Ranch. The Sheriff's Office has donated $4,200 to the ranch to sponsor 2 campers for 1 week of camp each. Along with this donation, the sheriff will conduct a community-based program that instills the values of good citizenship, health, and a drug-free lifestyle. This donation and program falls within the guidelines and rules pursuant to the federal and state seized asset requirements. And throughout the summer, our patrol officers will conduct these contacts with the campers on a routine basis. And I understand it's already happening and has been received very well. So the sheriff just asked that I advise the committee of that. Anything else for public safety this morning? Supervisor Stevens?
Just, Sean, if you don't mind, just to go back to your, under topics for discussion, filling the corrections position. And this is more of just a question for my own, education here. If you said you rehired someone, so when a CO leaves and then they're, for whatever reason, I'm assuming obviously it was on good terms and they were doing something else and they're rehired, they come back in at the rate, at the step or whatever it is that they left at?
I believe what they call that is a reinstatement, and they come back in at what they were. It's, the maximum, I believe, is up to 3 years. I know that's what it is upstairs. I believe that's what it is down in corrections.
I mean, the maximum pay at the 3 years or 3 years to come back and get?
The maximum pay they would be eligible for is a 3-year step.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions this morning? Hearing none, a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Simpson, Supervisor Frazier, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Did we pass